I do. I'm sorry, I should have been prepared. Let me bring just a quick letter, a note, and I'm going to leave the name off because it won't make a difference who it is. But I got a note yesterday that says, as I'm sure you have seen, my house is for sale, obviously within city limits here. I have asked the neighbors to clean up their yard, and they agreed to do so. They have done little picking up, but their yard is still an issue for potential buyers. It is full of junk cars, a junk camper, things that are not attractive. I know where this is at. She says, we have gotten negative feedback from showings multiple times. She actually had a offer to purchase the place sight unseen until they came up. They did not want to walk in the house. They saw the neighbor's yard and decided not to purchase the property. Is there anything the city council can do to help me? Think camper and Bronco in the yard is a major issue, I think. Any suggestions? So I know that we have gone through and talked about ordinances before, but this may be something we want to somehow get to and address, and I don't know. We can't obviously solve it here in the open forum. I don't know if we want to add it to the agenda or put it on something future, but I understand what people are saying when they can't sell their homes because of what's going on next door.
A question for that might be, it will come up in the council priority conversation later on. So I would recommend that we consider that in the council priority conversation, because then we can add it as like, how can we address this as a priority? Because this is not something new.
No.
I mean, it's something that I've talked with Chris a couple of times about this, and with a bunch of other city officials at different League of Minnesota City stuff to see what you can do. And there's not a ton of stuff that you can do without getting like kind of in.
My first thought was to contact the sheriff's department, but do they have our ordinance? I mean, they have our ordinance information available to them.
Sure.
Yeah.
Any ordinances that are going to talk about that, I mean, maybe the campers, there's something that's pretty specific, but the rest of it is going to be nuisance related and things that the council would probably have to declare a nuisance. And, you know, would take some staff work by deputies or somebody else to do investigations and put reports together. And at this time, we would also be talking to the neighbors about what they might be able to do. So we can certainly start that process and just see where it goes.
Okay.
I think that our updated city code might give us better tools, maybe some middle ground tools with administrative citations that we don't have currently in our code. But that's not ready yet, and you haven't approved it, so.
Okay. We can chat a little bit after. I can call you tomorrow too, Mike. So thank you.
Anything else for the open forum?
Folks got an email today from Andrea Orest.
Right.
I don't know if anybody's had a chance to read that.
I did see that.
About the
I
tobacco
thought
legislation.
it probably needs to be added to an agenda at some point, just for a quick check-in on, do we want to respond in some way to it? So I don't know if people are ready to do that tonight, since it just came today, or whether you'd rather deal with it next meeting.
I think next meeting would be more appropriate. I don't know if everybody else agrees with that or not. Just give some time to gather some more information.
Yeah, and it sounds like they want to do some education, so obviously they're not part of it tonight.
No, I think that what I was hoping for is the council talk about whether we want to engage with this or not, really.
I'm always willing to listen to someone.
Yeah, I think listening to it wouldn't be a bad idea.
Well, I mean, that's enough conversation for me. I'm happy to just respond and say, let's put you on an agenda.
Okay.
Well, that was 2 of 4. See, Michael's kind of nodding his head. So, okay, well, let's do that. Anything else for open forum? Seems like we're getting stuff done in the open forum even. So, hearing nothing, close the open forum, move on to the consent agenda. Nothing special on the consent agenda, just the typical 3 things. This meeting's agenda, do we have anything to add to the agenda, I should ask? All right. The meeting minutes of the previous meeting and the payment of bills since the last meeting. So if no one would like to pull something for conversation, then I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I would so move.
Okay. We got a movement. Do we get a second?
I'll second it.
Movement and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Now, this is interesting. Do we still have to do a roll call vote because one of us is remote?
Sure,
I think we probably do.
yes.
Yeah, we do.
Okay. All right. And I don't have a screen in front of me to look.
You'll have to think of
I'll
people's
just have
names.
to
You
do
gotta
it.
turn
I'll just have
and-
to do it.
Turn to your right and look
Yep,
at us,
I'll
Jay.
just go around and we'll go from there. All right. Kelly, your vote.
Aye.
Craig, your vote.
Aye.
Michael, your vote.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. And the consent agenda passes. I have a tendency to make things more complicated than they have to be.
Oh,
So anyway, we'll go from there. All right. So Animal Pound Business Park proposal. So we have a memo in our packet that summarizes a site, I guess I would say a site that has been identified that could work. So, Mike, you want to take it over?
yes, there are a few things that I think we learned about the EDA's original conversation about this. One, there wasn't an official ask in front of them that included details about what was going to happen, and so they felt like it really wasn't appropriate to move forward without that. And two, the lot that we had originally talked about, they weren't excited about using for an animal pound because it seemed to have a lot more promise for other uses. And particularly since the PUC had not moved forward with using it for their solar installation, it seemed like that wasn't a target anymore for a land giveaway to the city county to do something like this. And they pointed us into this direction, which is on the west side of the park, above where there's a few lots that have been sold and developed. There's a few lots that are covered with a significant amount of wetlands, and say the west half of this lot and the lot below it, those wetlands have not been mitigated, meaning that anyone that wanted to come in and use the west sides of these lots would have a lot of expense and potentially trouble really getting those wetlands mitigated. So they seemed like a better target to look at. So what we have in the map is just a quick rendition of about a 30 by 30 foot square, which is the red box, and the building itself that has been drawn for us was about 20 by 30 feet. And then a small parking area and driveway, just to show that it's really quite easy for us to use just the east half of this piece of property for development. And I think this might then take care of both of the concerns that the EDA had as a board in looking at this. It's on a better site. They've got some details about what we would actually be doing. And then the next question is, what are the terms? And they're concerned about what do we do with the assessment on these properties. There's a special assessment on each lot that the EDA pays an annual payment on, that the source of that is the county's countywide EDA levy. And we use that money in addition to a city levy and some additional county funds that come through the EDA to pay the bond payment that paid for the water, sewer, and street construction. So this is currently the balance is $10,394. There's a 1,000 or so of that is budgeted to be paid this year by the EDA, but that's what the balance is today. So what would we do with that assessment if we were to transfer ownership from the EDA to the city or the county? And it's just a question of kind of who's going to pay it, or are we going to pay it, or are we going to forgive it?
Right.
I think forgiving it's probably, it seems the simplest, but it probably isn't. So making some sort of accounting adjustment to actually pay it is probably the simplest. And we can either use our own debt reserves that we accumulate from lot sales to just pay ourselves with through the assessment, or we could ask the county to split the costs with us, which is really the spirit of how we're paying the bond right now anyway. So I think both of those are options that are worth looking at. Either way, we're not going to ask the EDA to come up with any additional money. We'll take care of the assessment, I think, is the message to that board. And then it'd just be between the city and the county to determine how we do that.
Considering that we've identified this project as a joint city-county project, it does seem appropriate that that would be split. Of course, that is a comment made from a very surface level, look at it. Once we get a little bit deeper into the conversation about the construction and the cost that goes into that, then of course these conversations get more complicated. And I know we don't have to make this decision. We don't have to make a decision on this tonight, but question for you is, what is the EDA looking for from us for the next step? Are they looking for an answer about the assessment, or where are we at?
We haven't asked them that question, so I couldn't say. I think where we're at is, if you're okay with the concept that we'll take this to the EDA board, put it on one of their agendas, and have a conversation with them. And I don't think we need to answer the question of how we're going to take care of the assessment in order to talk to the EDA, other than to say we're not going to ask them to contribute any of it. So we would ask them to contribute the lot, but everything else we'll take care of. And I think the conversation about splitting it with the county, what makes sense to me about that is, of course, there's a lot of other expenses we're going to be talking about splitting with the county when it comes to this project, which, just put this on the budget.
Right.
And we don't have a good enough budget yet to really have that conversation with the county. And I think if the EDA says, yes, we're okay looking at this lot, then we would move forward and we'd start talking with stormwater development plan and start looking at what's it really going to take, where would we actually site it to deal with the wetlands and the grades and drainage and everything else, and start to get some cost assessments for site development. And then we can have a good conversation with the county about, here's what we've got. Here's the lot cost, here's the site development cost, here's the building costs. How are we going to figure this out?
We can keep this moving at a relatively good pace. In a way, there's a need for it. The other part is, of course, obviously, if we go into building, lumber costs are tremendous right now. So 6 months down the road might be some relief. But, I just would like to see us really keep moving forward, not stalling out, because there is a need. But hopefully, in a couple months, maybe lumber prices have also managed to come back down a bit. Fingers crossed.
Right. If you're nodding heads tonight, I'd like to get on the next EDA agenda with this.
Wonderful.
And even if that goes well and they say great, we're still months out before we're ready to do any work.
Right.
So.
Yep.
The concern that I have, the only concern that I have really, is that we make sure to dot all of our i's and cross all of our t's when we go and talk to the EDA, so it doesn't get kicked back again. It seems like we're going that way. We're going down that route. If we have all the things that the EDA has asked us to do so that we can get a decision made on a lot, then great. I think it's good. I'm afraid, like what Kelly's saying, that if we got to think this through thoroughly so that when it comes up, we can actually take action on it instead of having to go and collect more information and push it back longer and longer.
Well, no guarantees that that's what's going to happen when we
Right.
talk to the EDA.
Exactly.
We've responded to the first round of feedback. There may be more. And
If we can
we'll-
answer as many of the questions that we can anticipate, though, that would be ideal, I think. So, council, are we telling them to put this on the next EDA agenda?
Yes,
I think so,
please.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. Well, thanks for preparing that for us. Yeah, that's good news. Next thing on the agenda is council priorities. So just for the people watching at home, the council met briefly the other day to go over council priorities that were reported through a couple of different activities that Patrick had department heads, administrative staff, and council go through. And there's quite a list of things that came up. Obviously, some of these priorities showed up multiple times, and some of these priorities came from the expertise of the people in the positions that took the surveys. So, so we have some really specific things on the list. We vetted the list to see if that was what we, if that was a complete list of where we all were at. And now the next steps are.
Right. Not tonight.
Not tonight, but
I'll just talk a little bit about what we did to put that list into categories. We thought about, for all those items that people brought up in the brainstorming sessions, Is this something that even requires to be a council priority for us to really move forward on? Or is it something that we're just gonna be able to deal with without it having to be listed as a council priority? Because there was quite a range of scope of ideas, of course, when you're brainstorming. You've got everything from, we really need to fix that piece of equipment, to, boy, the economy in this town could use some work.
Yeah.
And I mean, that, the one doesn't need to be, we have an equipment replacement plan that the council's already a part of, and that we don't need to make it a priority in order for the staff to bring forward a request to replace a piece of equipment that's on our schedule. So that sort of thing, like, okay, we'll keep it on the list because it was mentioned, but it doesn't need to be created into its own category. It can be lumped with other things into a bigger concept. There are a lot of pieces of this that are also previous priorities. It's only 2 years since you've done this, and one of those 2 years was a really, really strange one. So obviously there hasn't been a lot of progress on some of the things that we had put on the list. We really got a great start on our code enforcement conversation, and then that kind of went away. We had a real great start on City Hall Liquor Store, and then that went away. And really the only priority that we've had a lot of success moving forward on is Highway 61, because
We have to.
it just is moving forward. And so that's one of the other things we thought about is, well, which of these things are just gonna happen anyway? And when we do the voting, well, I'll kind of reiterate these thoughts that everybody should have in the back of their head. There's no sense picking a lot of priorities that we're not gonna be able to fit in, because there's ones that are gonna happen anyway. That's kind of Highway 61 last time. It might as well be on the list because we're doing it, It's gonna take up time and space and energy.
Right.
And not sure that there's as much of that, but certainly the city code enforcement and the code update is a project that we're in the midst of, and we're gonna keep moving on. And it would be strange at this point, I think, for a council to say that it really isn't important to us anymore. I mean, you could do that, but I'm not anticipating it.
I'm gonna leave it 3/4 of the way done.
And then there's some real big questions that we face. Are we going to keep City Hall Liquor Store front in our minds and try to move forward on it? Or is it on the back burner for a while we try to take care of some other things? And I think that'll be a good conversation to hear where people are at and figure out how to move forward. And I think that kind of conversation is gonna help us understand what are the things we're gonna spend our time on this year. So thanks for all that, and I really was very satisfied with the conversation we had, even though it was only 15 minutes. It could have been 15 minutes if we were all in a room together too. So this is going as good as it can, even though we're doing a lot of it remotely.
A lot of the activities too, the different ways of getting the information, I think that the less talking we have to do after we start gathering the information, also says something about, those activities are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
I hope so,
Yeah.
yeah. Now, you also have time between meetings to let things marinate and find out if that's actually true or if there's other things that need to be brought up.
Mhm.
So, before your next meeting, we will conduct the prioritization steps where you're required to really choose and not able to choose all the ones you want, and see what happens. And we'll look at that list. And oftentimes we do that, and it's enough to put a list together that everybody's willing to accept. And if it's not, then we talk about it, and we have other tools we can use to help figure out what belongs and what doesn't.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
Yes, Mike?
Yeah, thanks.
Sorry.
I was wondering, is the priority list from 2019, is that rank ordered?
You mean like number one is more important than number two?
Yeah.
I think no, but yes. So when we voted 2 years ago, there was some that were obviously more important than others on the list. Code enforcement was probably the one that was the number one choice at that time. So I think that was number one on the list, but it wasn't the one that necessarily, it was probably treated equally with housing and Highway 61 in terms of the amount of time and resources we spent on it. and City Hall Liquor Store. Like, kind of all of those got pushed forward, I think, at the same speed at first. So there was some implied order to it, but it's hard to really stick to that.
Well, and COVID changed it. I mean, the liquor store was a high priority for us, and we all made the decision with, COVID and March and April having to be closed and not knowing what summer would be, to just say we can't go forward with this project and spend the money, not knowing where we're going in revenues or expenditures. So
Yeah.
that just it didn't fall off the list, but it just got tucked away.
So when we think
A lot of
about
things did.
what will we do with the next list, and will we try to put them in a ranked order, I think, yes, we will. Like, the tools that we're going to use to select them will imply a ranked order. But more importantly, they get grouped into, these are really important, these are less important. And we don't want to have things on the list that we don't think we're going to get to, right? That, well, yeah, they're important, but there's other ones that are a higher category. So if we can just get all the ones that we think are sort of grouped somewhat equally in terms of how important they are to us, the ranking isn't quite as necessary. We just want to get the ones that we intend to spend time and energy on.
Any other questions on the council priority activity? And I have a question, Mike, about what we're doing with the lists that we have. It does seem a little bit premature to be throwing those out and saying, this is what the priorities are, because we haven't actually done that yet. But I think it would be very interesting for people in the community to see what came up, to see, once we pull the things out that are like, replace this truck, that sort of thing, like those
Well,
things that
we
are
haven't
already
pulled any of that out.
encapsulated.
So, and all those documents are available for people to see.
Cool.
So, yeah, anybody who wants to dig in and see how this was created, that's all available.
Yep.
And won't be going anywhere.
Cool. That was actually what I was kind of getting at. So, right.
Say what you want to say.
Well, I was trying to figure out
Sort
the
of.
best, smoothest way to get there, which of course making things more complicated. Anyway, I mentioned it's really nice to be around you guys, like unusually chatty. Anyway, that is everything we have on our agenda for tonight. So we'll go to council and staff reports. So, Kelly, can I start with you?
You can.
Okay.
The Passion Pit Committee has met twice this month. The second, we're going to meet continuously, at least for the time being, the second and the fourth Monday of every month. So it kind of coincides with the week that I have council, which is kind of nice. I missed the last session, obviously, with a family emergency, but I think Jay brought up kind of the asks that I had
Mhm.
from that committee a little bit. Mike and I talked the other day a little bit. I met with them Monday night, kind of said, here's what we're available, but I would come back to council. So we know that we have a garbage can available to put at Passion Pit there. We're trying to figure out, in a short term, how to mitigate some of the issues that are happening there. And while you want to mitigate some of the issues, sometimes when you add things, it draws more attention to things. So it's complex.
Mhm.
But some of the things that came up were, could we maybe contribute a garbage can? And Mike said, yeah, with everything that we had last year, we do have a garbage can around. I will talk to them to see when they're ready, who will pick that up, and I will get that information back to Mike. And some garbage liners. They talked about a pet station. And I said, I really need to come back to council to talk about that, because Mike and I talked about the cost. We don't have one that's just here available. To purchase one, Mike thought was shortly above, is around roughly $100 or a little more. If we add the garbage can onto it, that's bringing the cost up like $300 or more. The county right now is going to provide, I'm not sure when, but in the parking area, there's kind of a large dip. I won't call it a hole, where a very large puddle forms, and that needs some fill. And the county highway department has said yes, they will go in and put fill in that area right now to kind of smooth that out and make it a better place. And we're looking at some signage, but we haven't defined if we're going to put anything there, what we might put there, because as we know, you can say the visiting hours are such or that quiet time is this, but there's really no one to enforce it. And some of the land is not county land, it's state land, and MnDOT is not going to come up here and enforce any rules. And depending upon what the sheriff's department has going on, they could be in other parts of the county. They won't be continuously patrolling. So I said I would come back and see if we wanted to purchase the pet dispensing station, the bag dispensing station, or if we want to leave that. Commissioner Sullivan also thought the county would be willing to purchase one if we didn't. I said I would ask this group. So that is something that we can either discuss tonight or at the next session. The garbage can, I think they're going to want probably sometime this week because of the upcoming weekend. We also talked a bit about how the committee felt about, do we want to keep this area public land or private land? And the majority of the group voted that we are in favor of continuing to keep this as public land in the short term. I think people are aware Grand Portage has asked MnDOT if they would consider ceding the land back to the tribe. There has been, I believe, a private person who has contacted MnDOT about purchasing the land that I believe would probably keep it private. There could be other people who have contacted MnDOT. I said not necessarily a private owner keeps the land private. Somebody might say, hey, I want to buy it and this is what I want to build and have here. Mm-hmm. There's lots of options. But our group decided that we would like to see it remain public land. We also voted, and several people were going to write letters of support to MnDOT that we are in favor and their groups are in favor of it being ceded back to Grand Portage. Chairman Deschamps did, while he's not on the committee, he has been joining and listening. There were some questions as to how they would treat the area, what they would do there. They would not necessarily make it a park, but as I'll say, Bobby, I guess I feel comfortable saying that. Bobby spoke, he said, you know, Grand Portage is very good and very enthusiastic about taking care of their lands and maintaining their lands and keeping them clean and honoring the land and the water. And that would continue to happen if they were to have that property from MnDOT. As far as enforcements of quiet times and parties and different things, he stated that through their tribal treaties and such, it would be followed just like if anyone placed a call, the sheriff's department would answer it just like they do currently right now up on the reservation. So we all felt very comfortable that it would be a well-maintained place, and they obviously want to keep it public. So I stated I would come back and ask our group if we are at all interested in writing a letter of support, if we feel so compelled to write a letter of support to MnDOT for the Grand Portage tribe to in fact be ceded that land. So I know we didn't actually have it on the agenda. We could either talk about it now or talk about it in 2 weeks.
I mean, we could certainly take just a poll and just see what people say. I mean, that's a pretty simple thing. I mean, you did a really good job of explaining like where things are at. I mean, I think that, and also there's been newspaper articles on this and such, so the information is kind of out there. I mean, I feel comfortable saying that, yeah, I would totally sponsor a letter of support for it. I mean, that I feel pretty strongly that would be an appropriate step. I don't know if anybody else
As
does
a
anything.
member of the committee, I voted in support of that.
Okay. You other guys, you got any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I would support that letter. And I would also support splitting the dog bin thing as well,
The cost,
the cost of that.
okay. What do you
Yeah, I
think, Rick?
agree. I think I'd support a letter to the state.
Yeah, okay. Well, you can bring that back.
Okay. Are you comfortable writing something?
I could work with Patrick on it, yeah.
Um,
Bring it back to the next council meeting, have you guys approve it.
Sure, and then I
Yeah,
will,
draft.
I will let them know. We'll actually have our council meeting right after,
Right after
our
your
meeting's
next
the 14th for, we meet here sooner. So I think this time we'll actually meet before
Nice.
they
We'll
do.
be able to
Yeah.
get it
So
done right.
then I can let them know that we are doing that. If
Okay.
you have it, if we have it ready, then I will just ask them.
Yeah, we'll
Um,
get it on the agenda.
But we can send it to the Department of Transportation. So, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to give you, there's a whole lot happening.
Oh, I totally get it. I
we-
appreciate that you took the time to actually
So,
explain it all.
we also had one committee member who I think felt it wasn't working as they thought. We received a letter of resignation from it, but I'm wondering, I won't state anything because I'm wondering if they think about it, if maybe they won't come back to join us. So, we'll see, but it's open to the public for viewing. You can go to the county website and you can connect and you can come in and watch the meetings. They start at 5 o'clock. Our next one is June 14th. So for anyone that is interested at all in that, they certainly are welcome to come and watch and see what happens in the discussions. The other thing, I just got notification the other day, the North Shore Management Board is going to meet again July 7th, which I thought was
Is that-
not a Wednesday.
It's the first Wednesday.
Is it
Yeah,
the first
I
one?
was thinking
So,
that, yeah, you're set.
so I can actually attend a North Shore Management Board meeting. I don't know if it'll be Zoom or in person. They're talking about what to do.
What time will it be?
You had to ask me that?
Well, you don't have to answer, but there will be a planning commission meeting that day at 4 o'clock.
Well, I could
So make it
always,
remote.
Yeah, remote works.
It's gotta be remote.
you know, guys,
And I guarantee you there will be things on the agenda.
I guarantee there will. Usually they're at 6 p.m. So it says July 7th at 6 p.m. via Zoom. Hey, I'm in.
You're
That'll
gonna have
work
a
great.
busy
I'm
afternoon.
in.
There we go. Anything
There,
else?
I did all my talking. I think I'm good.
Well played. All right, thanks, Kelly. Craig, do you have anything?
I don't.
All right.
I don't.
Michael, you have anything?
Nope. No,
Oh, go ahead. Oh, no. Okay. I have been attending weekly meetings. It's the Minnesota Mayors Together is what it's called. It's a group of mayors, a number of them from northern Minnesota, but also from other parts of the state. A couple of big cities, but a lot of rural, smaller communities that have been participating. And there isn't really a set agenda for the meeting, but they do have a topic. So the one that I went to was they were talking about how we could continue to encourage vaccinations. The last one, Representative Stauber was there, and we asked him a bunch of questions about his views on how things were going in northern Minnesota and how we could all work together to accomplish our goals. So I mean, those are actually pretty good stuff, to be able to get connected with people who, you know, on different levels of our state and federal government, and also to connect with other community leaders and discuss what their challenges are and what's going on with them. So that's one of the things I had. It seems like there are other things that have been happening, but I have not attended meetings on them. So,
They didn't ask you to speak on the topic since Cook County has got the best percentage.
no, actually, I just kind of sat smugly in that meeting where they were talking about vaccinations, and we're just like, well, let me tell you what we did. And,
I think we're up over I think it's 78% that
Think
have
so.
received at least one dose.
Yep. Yep, it's pretty awesome.
That's what came out
And
yesterday.
half of Americans have received it, I believe, I guess, at least one vote.
Really?
I think so.
Last week, something I heard on national news was like It was close to a third when the mask mandate kind of came off,
Mm.
because that's where I was caught so surprised, but,
I saw a news article that said, I think it said 50% have at least gotten one.
oh, at least
shot.
one, gotcha,
Yeah.
okay.
So we're still moving in the right direction, which is good. That's all I have. Do you, gentlemen and/or Kim, have anything?
I have a few.
And I was wondering
tidbits.
if you could also give us a little bit of an update on what's happening with Highway 61.
I can't, other than to tell you that they have a meeting tomorrow where they'll be giving an update on what's happening with Highway 61.
There we go.
If you have any specific questions, I'll be happy to try and answer them.
I was just
But-
waiting for you to say there's a big hole in the ground.
There is not as big a hole anymore as there used to be
It's
in
true.
the ground.
Have they already done the digging out?
Yeah, the big dig is already filled in.
Mostly done, yeah.
Mostly filled in.
Really? So we're gonna have our highway back in like June? Yeah.
Well,
not-
that, they got an early start, that went faster than they thought, and then it rained for a week, and it's like, okay, yes, that's right, things still happen. And we've found a thing or two that we didn't expect, so, I mean, it's still a complicated project, and
Yeah.
we'll let it play out. I think it's going well right now. And I've been happy with, working with their project manager and getting, response to things that we've asked for, and, making adjustments to signage and other things where people initially saw it and were confused by it. And if people still have issues with that, let us know, or just talk to them directly at MnDOT. They've been great about it, and I think they'd be happy to keep working on it if there's issues.
I'll ask, and I don't know if you can answer, and I know it's up to them, but I'll say fairly large truck traffic, are they really supposed to be within city streets? I've had several, I know they're lost.
No, they're
our
definitely not supposed to. I mean,
neighborhood.
Our own local ordinances say those types of trucks are only allowed on our city streets if they're making deliveries. But
Okay,
I don't know why they're
lot of
getting
them-
lost. If coming
they're-
from the west, it's pretty clear they're not supposed to continue
Yeah, they're
past
missing the
7.
detour sign. I don't know how they're doing it, but they are.
have they
They
upgraded
get
that?
to Broadway.
Yeah, there's like 20 of them out there. I don't know how you could not miss it.
Okay, because for a while it was one, and it was right as you should turn up County Road 7, and it wasn't,
No, there's a great big orange one just
okay,
east of the state build highway department.
Hmm.
And then there's a smaller detour, and then there's one out on the middle of the highway that says detour.
Up-
And then you got another chance at the Gunflin Trail if you want a detour,
Right.
yeah. I
but
just,
they end up at the intersection.
west
Yeah.
of town 2 weeks ago when we came home, I was right behind a large truck and he just kept coming and I'm like, he didn't turn up, but it was like, there wasn't any signage at all to say large truck will detour, up or north or to the left. It was like you kind of got to County Road 7, the bottom of it, and there was the sign. And it's
Yeah.
like, if they're doing 55 miles an hour, they will not be turning up County Road 7 at that point. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh boy.
Well, they can drive on 8th still. I mean, that is a county state aid road.
Yeah.
Trucks can drive on it.
Yeah.
Obviously, I live on 2nd Street, which seems to be the very popular route when you get
They're
to
trying
you
to
get to the
see-
Broadway intersection here, and you're now suddenly have no idea
Mhm.
how to continue. They find their way to the courthouse,
Yep.
and then they turn left and get frustrated again. We've found a number of uncontrolled intersections need to be controlled now, so we've been installing stop
We
signs,
got
and,
stop signs
and we'll
going.
keep doing that until we
Thank
get
you.
that sorted out. I think one of the problems is with the detour not being on those city streets, MnDOT's not involved in the traffic control on those city streets, and they're also not responsible for any of the damage that's going to occur to those city streets, and I'm sure they're not interested in any of that either,
Yeah.
since they have an official detour route. So, because they do, if we ask, they've been responsive in trying to get the signage improved on that stuff, but I still see a lot of people turning left on 5th, trying to find the highway again, and I know they're driving down to 1st Street and heading over to 8th and heading down, and that's a pretty common route. I'm sure a lot of them are locals, but I'm sure a lot of them are lost too.
Yeah.
It's tricky stuff,
It
but
is.
we're
It's always-
managing it, and I think
Last year.
particularly.
Yeah.
It's the last year.
I've seen some pretty amazing truck turns.
Some
through
talented
this.
people.
It's
Right.
amazing. Those truck drivers, I mean, like, I was like, oh my God, he's going to destroy that building. And he totally made it. I was amazed. Barely. So anyway, yes, that's all kind of been a mess, but I do think that the longer we go, the better the signage gets, the more people get familiar with it, the more clear it's going to become.
Yeah.
So that's all encouraging.
Next week, we have Public Utilities Commission and Planning Commission on Wednesday. The Planning Commission has 3 public hearings again. So we're doing a couple of home-based businesses on Broadway that we, have had some cooperation with the property owners to make the applications for those, which is terrific. And they'll also be talking a little bit about our sewer system, and that's something the Planning Commission said they'd like to work on this year is in terms of housing, let's figure out what's going on with our municipal sewer system. And we're not going to look at maps of it, but we're going to talk about what steps we're going to take at that meeting. And then next Friday, and this is just now coming together pretty quickly, I'll take a step back. You recall the Minnesota Housing Partnership is up here working with the EDA and talking about the question of a housing redevelopment authority. And because they're, of COVID, they haven't been able to come visit, but they generally include site visits in the work that they do with communities. And so they're looking at next Friday the 4th as a site visit. We're putting together an agenda of things that they're going to do. One of them would be a lunch panel discussion at the courthouse, here in town. They also might do some site visits of some housing projects in the county that are currently in the works. So I'll keep you all apprised of that as the agenda gets developed, and of course you're all invited to that.
What was that date again?
Friday the
June
4th.
4th. I will
And-
be in Duluth.
I
Shoot.
will also be not here.
Well, it won't
If
be the
it's-
last
is it
time we'll talk
remote?
about it. No, and this is as much for their benefit, the team that's working with us to try and learn about the community as it is about us. It actually seems a little bit like the housing summit that happened a few years ago, if you remember, where we're just going to talk about what's going on and try to really build some momentum around some of the cool things that are happening when it comes to housing in the community. There are a lot of cool things happening, so
Cool.
that's what I've got.
Patrick, you have anything? Kim? Can't even see you. If you don't make any noise in the next 2 seconds. Okay. But that's all of our business for the night. Thank you for your work. I believe we are adjourned.
Nice to see everybody.
Yes.